I'm the librarian for Oklahoma Transportation Library. Today, we're going to go over a little bit of the resources available for website accessibility. I know in the past we've looked at Adobe and PDF pretty extensively, and we've got a few comments and requests about, well, what's the difference between website and PDF accessibility? What resources are out there? What's different about that? So we're going to take a look at some of the differences, look at some resources available for testing websites, and we're actually going to go and test a few websites as well for accessibility. We're going to see how our website measures up, and hopefully, if anyone has any links they'd like to share, we'll see how your website measures up for accessibility. So, no pressure, low stakes, but just something to see how we're doing overall with accessibility. So, let me go ahead and share my screen really quickly here. Hopefully, everyone can see it okay. All right. So, a little bit about accessibility for websites and accessibility testing in general. There's two general ways of testing, manual and automated. And I think anyone who has done any accessibility testing, either with websites or PDFs or Word documents or any other form, kind of knows the difference between the two. One, you have the manual, which is in person, you yourself going over the item. You can use assistive technologies such as screen readers, voice recognition software, and keyboard-only navigation to evaluate certain accessibility requirements of the document or the website. And manual is generally more thorough and more accurate, but it is way more time-consuming because you may have a automatic tester that says there's alt text, but manually you have to go in and see what the alt text says. So that can be very time consuming to make sure it measures up. So there are pros and cons. Manual does take a lot longer, but it's worth it in the long run. That's not to say that automated is totally useless. There are some automated features that you can use to help supplement your manual testing. So automated testing involves using software tools that scan either items, documents, or websites for accessibility issues. And these tools can ID issues like missing alt text, improper heading structure, and color contrast issues. Things that really an AI or some automated feature is really good at detecting that you may or may not be so great at, like looking at heading structure. It can quickly identify the structural components of a document for that and quickly zero in on it. So automated testing can be faster, but it can also produce false positives or miss certain types of issues. Again, it may detect that alt text is there, but it may not detect the quality of the alt text. So that's something to keep in mind. Moving along, there's different types of testing as well. Primarily with websites. We're going to be considering just websites today, but for website testing, there's functionality testing, which is ensuring that a website is functional by people with disabilities. This includes testing with assistive technologies to ensure all interactive elements can be accessed and used, and that all content is present and presented in a clear and understandable way. Examples, think of like maybe there's graphics, maybe there's animations, maybe there's links, just making sure it is functioning the way it should and nothing is broken. The other category is in usability, which evaluates, like it says, the overall usability of the website. And this includes testing navigation and layout and ease of use for interactive elements like fonts and buttons and things like that. So is it usable? Is what is there working the way it should? And lastly is general compliance testing, which ensures it meets specific standards. And the one we use is WCAG, that 2.3 standard. Compliance testing for this involves testing against each success criteria in WCAG and IDing any areas of the website that may fall short. Some general best practices when you're looking at websites. I think if anyone's done any accessibility testing for documents, there are a few things that are similar, but a few things that are different. I think in general, having good alt text for images, descriptive and concise links, etc., and color contrast. Where things may differ is looking at accessible forms. You may not have a form in a PDF or a Word document, but you may have a form in a website, and making sure that that is accessible. And we've even had some questions and comments come in through the Section 508 listserv about using forms and what happens if you have a visually impaired person who can't access the form. Well, you need to offer some kind of comparative offer for them to be able to get the same content either in a physical document or something that isn't online, just making sure that there are other alternatives to an online form that are accessible. Same with multimedia. You may have sound, you may have audio in a website, you may have other items that wouldn't be built into a Word document or a PDF, but may be present in a multimedia website. So having audio descriptors, having things that help describe the content, either if a person is visually impaired or having visual accessibility standards for someone who may not be able to hear the content. So again, these are just some of the best practices to keep in mind for your website. I know we're moving at a fairly quick pace, but just a few items to get through. And also future developments. I wanted to dwell on this a little bit to see what was, maybe worth considering as we build our own websites and modify our websites in the future. For example, artificial intelligence is going to have a huge potential to improve accessibility in that it can learn preferences of individual users and adjust websites accordingly to provide a more personalized experience. So we're seeing some of this come out in some of the AI related technologies that are being used by some of the big tech corporations. So that's still kind of in the early stages, but it is coming down the road. There's also a greater focus on mobile accessibility, not just desktop, big picture applications, but for smaller screens, for mobile devices. And honestly, I think it's becoming the main way that people access the web. I'm sure there's studies out there that most people who access the internet are doing it on their mobile devices. So people really need to think about the kinds of content that they put on their websites and think of it, well, how would it look like in a phone? There are a lot of website creators out there that help with this. We use Squarespace, for example, and it always has a mobile and accessibility option that you can look at it in a mobile view and see if everything checks out. And so thinking in terms of font sizes, thinking in terms of how well a graphic shows up, et cetera, definitely needs to be considerations when you're working on accessibility for a website. And also navigation, where the navigation links are positioned. Are they in a vertical? Are they horizontal? How are they portrayed? And how are they going to show up on a smaller screen? And also improved access for cognitively disabled people. For example, focusing on content that's easier to understand and navigate using plain language, simple design, and again, just easy navigation. You never know where someone is coming from, either, how they would view things, developmentally, any issues anyone may have. So we always want to make sure it's as welcoming and easy to understand as possible. So improving access for those groups of folks as well is vitally important. So there also lastly needs to be a greater emphasis on user testing according to a lot of the data that's coming out. And I think this is a question I can throw back to the group before we move on to our next phase of this workshop. How many folks actually do have user testing from individuals who are differently abled looking at your website? You may have a bunch of professionals building it, but how often do you actually bring it back to the community that you may be wanting to target to see, hey, does this work? Does this meet standards? For example, a person who is colorblind, do you have someone colorblind either on your staff or as part of a focus group that can help test this, or any other differently abled person? So I'm going to stop sharing for a second and throw this back to the group to see if anyone has any either groups or experiences like that of people, of user testing. How do you do testing on your website? For us, we use some automated methods. We actually don't use, unfortunately, a lot of focus groups or user testing. But does anyone else know of any parameters or any user testing that you do with your own website or documents for accessibility? Well, Claire posted in the chat, I used to have a colorblind coworker, but she left for another institution. Our web team only does automated testing to my knowledge. That's great. Yeah. We used to have a colorblind individual on our staff as well, and he was very excellent in pointing out when we messed up, so that was great to have that resource, but unfortunately he left for another position. I see Jeffrey and then I see Katie. So yes, Jeffrey.
We use a combination of things. For instance, I always double check any color combinations I use using, I think there's 2 or 3 sources that I use. One is Adobe, and then there's some other WC3 resources that will tell you straight up, this will not work for colorblind people. But the other things that we use mainly when developing new portions of the website is I use A/B testing. I do very subtle changes to the site first, or I add a new feature that is subtly different from the existing site, and I do A/B testing, and I get people to do free-form thought on what it is that they're looking at in each page. Either I direct them to say, look at this thing, or not, compare it to the original, or I do a comparison where I just say, please look at this web page in general and telling what it is how you would navigate it, that kind of thing.
Oh, that's great. Do you have links to any of those resources? Would that be something you'd feel comfortable sharing either with the group or myself, and we can pass that along to folks if they're interested?
Oh yeah, I can gather some of that up. I'm right now looking at my iPad, so I don't have it on my iPad, but I do have it here on my computer. I can log into it and
Okay,
use that
great.
to pass that along.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We can maybe Beth or Rosalind, maybe we can add some of these resources to our website, and if we find that there's something that we can add to our content library, so that's good. All right, Katie, yeah, you had your hand up.
I think it's important to remember that some of these things that we're talking about for people who may need a little help are also helpful for people who are learning English. For example, I had a coworker who could speak English quite fluently, but struggled with reading it. So the pared down content always worked much better for her, as opposed to super complicated things.
Excellent, excellent point. Yeah. I think we often overlook, to Katie's point, how one thing we see it may help a specific group of folks, but it may also help a wider variety of folks as well. People we may not have even considered, may not have even needed that, but it's helpful to, at the end of the day, it brings the content to as wide an audience as it can. And I think that's really what accessibility really needs to be about, is sharing that content as much as we can. So great point. And Claire posted, I've definitely seen students watching the automated closed captioning carefully. That's excellent. I wonder, to that point, how many folks do have like closed captioning or assisted technologies for like webinars, for recordings, for things that you post online? Do you usually have a closed captioning or captions for your recordings, or are they usually just done audio only? Michael, yeah, I see your hand up.
The Texas Transportation Institute at Texas A&M University, they produce video summary reports for the Research program. And when those video summary reports are ready to be both published and then disseminated to our partners, we get an MP4 file, and then we also get an SRT file, which is closed captioning. And we make them both available for patrons who visit the catalog, just in case that closed captioning file is something that's important to them. Then TxDOT will take the video summary report MP4 file, they'll post it onto their own YouTube channel, and then we will retroactively bring that link back to our catalog. So the YouTube video is available with its inserted closed captioning already there.
That's great. I'm glad you got that support. That is fantastic. I wonder, I know YouTube does automatic closed captioning sometimes, or they have their own subtitles. Sometimes those have not been as accurate. I wonder if anyone's had any experience using or experimenting with that. Claire also posted, we usually have it for Zoom, but the new thing we've done is announcing it ahead of time in workshop descriptions. I'm at an academic library, so people don't have to ask if we have it. Example of with automated captioning, example without automated captioning. That's awesome. Thank you for those links. I'm gonna share those with the rest of the group. Yeah, Jeffrey, I see your hand up.
Usually the YouTube's automatic transcription system has iffy results, as you said, but there is a way when you make it, you can then manually take that file. It creates an SRT file, and then you can edit it. SRT files are super easy to edit. They are basically just a text file that has timestamps in it.
Oh,
And the timestamps is just, in fact, you can open an SRT file in a text editor and see exactly how it is laid out. There's nothing very special about any of the, there's no coding, there's no real special information in it. It's just how they format the timestamp. I think there's like 2 dashes, timestamp, and then 2 dashes, and then text right next to it. So if you need to create one and have a YouTube generate something for you, you can then download it or edit it in YouTube, and it will edit it for you.
that's fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, I had no idea that you could do all that with that. So I think we're definitely going to have to experiment and see what we can do. And maybe it would definitely be worth going back to some of our previous recordings and seeing how the auto captions work. And maybe there's definitely some modifications we can do to make it more accessible. So thank you, Jeffrey. This is great. This is excellent. Before we move on, yes, Beth.
I was curious. I've heard that sometimes folks find captions distracting. So I'm wondering about balancing that between accessibility for different types of people. And it looks like we can enable captions here if we would like to do so.
That's a good point. Yeah, to that point on distractions during captions, has anyone has experience with that, or a way to turn them off or on? Enid, I see your hand up. Is that related to Beth, or was there a different question?
I was just going to say we use Google. And if I have a meeting and I put the captions on and I record the meeting, the captions don't get carried over. So the recording doesn't have the captions. So Google doesn't have that. Excuse me. And we have to use Google as our official streaming here at YDOT. So some of them do, some of them don't. And the accuracy of some of the closed captions are really good. The accuracy of others is not. You have to be really careful. Depending on how someone speaks, you could get some fun little words that come across on the caption. So it's still something in progress. But like I said, I do everything I can. We put the captions on so those in the meeting can see the captions, but they don't carry over to the recordings. And our IT staff has told us that that's just not something that YDOT has implemented, which is, anyway. I do have some other comments on some other things. So when we get to the end, I've got some things to mention. So.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you, Enid. Yeah, I guess it depends on the platform, whether you're using YouTube or whatever your video hosting, website is, whether the captions will carry over, whether you can turn them on or off. Honestly, I'm wondering if it just may be safer to leave them on and let people deal with that. Just knowing at least we have that for people who otherwise wouldn't have been exposed or could hear the video. So let's see, it looks like Penny posted in the chat regarding the importance of making websites work on phones. Today, 15% of US adults are smartphone-only internet users, meaning they own a smartphone but do not have home broadband service. Interesting. Yeah, that's going to be a good article to read. Thank you for sharing that. And again, anything that's shared in the chat, all the links that we have, we can compile these and send them out to everyone at the end of this meeting. That shouldn't be a problem. So thank you. All right, moving along, let me go ahead and back to screen sharing. Here's a few web accessibility tools that are out there currently. Some are paid, some are free. Here you can see just a few of them. Some include whole suites of services and software that they provide. Ramp is one of them, for example, that is a monitoring platform and offers a free browser extension for automated scanning, including color contrast, manual audits, and even has an online learning academy. I went to their website and checked them out, and they did have some pretty robust training on there. So that could be an option. SkillTide Accessibility Checker is a free browser plugin for Chrome that includes information on how to address accessibility issues. And that's actually going to be one of the tools we'll be demoing later today to see how our own website measures up to SkillTide. So no pressure on any of us, but we'll see what kind of a grade we get. So there's also Total Validator that works on ensuring valid use of HTML, CSS, ARIA, and checks for broken links, and also Luma. And there's for video accessibility. I think this was something that actually hadn't occurred to me, but probably would to a lot of folks who experience this, obviously. Identifies sequences with flashing lights in videos and spatial patterns and other potential seizure triggers. Even if you have never experienced a seizure, you may not have found the trigger for it yet, and it could be something. So obviously, I think this impacts everyone that we need to be very cognizant of to make sure our videos or multimedia does not have any of that visual, flashing elements that could trigger something like that. And also here's a link for other website testing and evaluation tools. We can include that in the link summary we send afterwards, but this will include links to all of these tools mentioned and then some and more training that we can offer as well. So I'm going to stop sharing momentarily and see if I can get our website up, and we're going to run an accessibility check and see how we measure up. And also, if anyone would like to post their own website in the chat, we'll use that and test the accessibility of that as well. So if it's your own website or a website of maybe a rival or competitor, just a website of anybody you would like to see tested live here and recorded for posterity, please don't feel bad about posting that in the chat, because we're about to do the same with ours, and this is not scripted, so we're going to see how we do. So here we are in Chrome with the Oklahoma Transportation website. Pretty spiffy website, if I do say so myself, but we're going to go ahead and go to extensions. We have SkillTide. We're going to click on it and see what happens. So here we see a lot of different tools and things that measure for contrast, for alt text, screen reading, focus. What we're interested in is this accessibility checker that uses WCAG 2.2. Now, they've already upgraded to WCAG 2.3, but 2.2 works okay for our purposes for today. So we're going to click on it, and it's going to capture and analyze the page. And let's see how it does. So it looks like we have some issues, actually. Form control contrast. You can click on it and it gives a description of what's going on. Form controls must appear sufficiently distinct from their surroundings, so people with visual impairments are still able to clearly see them. And so it's highlighted 5 issues. So we can click on this and see, okay, yeah, we do have our forms, and it is highlighting it as an error, and it's talking about contrast and adding border. And so, okay, those are things that we could definitely do to help fix that. So it's fairly easy. I found this actually to be fairly easy in identifying it. It has it clearly laid out. The next one is link purpose. Let's click on that and see what issues there are. Link should be clear from the text. The purpose of a link should be clear from the text inside the link. Links like learn more are not helpful to users with assistive technologies. Yeah, I think we have a few links like that here. Yeah, so I guess we'll need to adjust our links, make them more descriptive so people can find out, what should be at that link. Table headers, it looks like we have an issue in one of our Google Maps. I'm actually not quite sure how we may address that. That's going to be an interesting problem to figure out. So, and then links with different destinations. I think that may be something we'll need to verify where that link is going, if that's correct.
Well,
But
Mike,
okay.
Go back to
Yes.
that map and right click on it.
Okay, let's
Let's
see.
see. Can you
Okay,
right click on it?
it is not letting me right click, unfortunately.
And there's not, okay, I was trying, because I know in some of the programs, if you right click on them, they'll give you some properties.
Mm-hmm.
Are you in
Yeah.
the editing or just on the main website? Are
Oh, it's
you
on
in
the
mode?
main website, not the editing portion of it.
So I'm wondering if you can fix those in the edit portion.
That's a good, yeah. Okay, we can check that. Good suggestion. Thank you. All right. So, hey, only 4 major categories that we're deficient in. That's not bad. So hopefully we can go ahead and address those. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing now. Does anyone have any websites that they would like to share? Maybe your own website, see if it identifies anything. No pressure. Just if anyone wants to plop in a website, it doesn't have to be your own, just a website where we can kind of test and see if there are other errors that pop up.
How much does that program, is that a free program? Did you say, Michael?
Yep, this is a free browser extension that you can install. So far, I think it's only for Chrome, but I think that works. So for
Oh,
us.
no, I like it. I'm gonna play with it when I redo my website.
Cool. All right. Penny posted a website. Let's go ahead and see how this goes. Oh, this is a cool website. Like I just kind of want to. All right. I'm not getting distracted. We're gonna do the accessibility checker here, see what comes up. Gonna do accessibility checker. Yeah, there's a lot of multimedia, graphics, moving text. This is interesting. Okay. All right. Actually, let's explore a little bit some of these options before we continue. Let's see. It looks like you can actually revert to previous versions of WCAG. Looks like it's doing 2.1. You can go up to 2.2 and AAA. We haven't really discussed this much in depth, but they do separate the level of thoroughness of its testing from A through AA through AAA. AA, I think, is usually the standard that we go off of, but if you really want to be the most accessible you can be, AAA is the one to go with. So let's see what we have here. Skip to content. What is this? Web pages should provide a way to skip to the main content of the page. Okay, and then it's showing an issue here. Oh, it looks like that little arrow. I I like how it highlights in red exactly what is showing maybe an accessible problem. And they do have links to show more. Okay, so it goes into a very big description of why this may be a problem, justification for it. So, okay, that's really good. Image and link alt text. Okay, looks like there's some alt text issues with some of these images. That's good to know. All right, yeah. There are a few issues, links, language, duplicate IDs. So there's a lot to play around with in here. And this is only testing just this page, not the whole website. So you'd probably need to go page by page and run the accessibility check to make sure things check out okay. So again, that's skill tied. It's a extension you can use for your browser. I'm sure there's a lot of other similar free applications that do stuff like this, but this was just one that popped up and seemed recommended. Oh, Gabby posted a website. Yeah, while I get Gabby's website loaded, I see Enid's hands up. Yes.
Michael, how did you get buy-in from Oklahoma to do this? I mean, are they on board? And if there's any suggestions, are they going to make, fix those suggestions? Or how did you get the buy-in? Because that's my big problem here at YDOT is getting buy-in.
Oklahoma has been fairly progressive when it comes to accessibility issues. They've been sticklers from the beginning for their accessibility program, for their PDFs and for documentation. And the powers that be in our research office really wanted to get ahead of any federal mandates so they didn't have to play catch up when the time came. And so at least for Word documents and research reports, we've been pretty progressive on that end. And I think doing the websites, and as long as it's free, like these free extensions, and yeah, it takes time out of our day to do this remediation, but they see it as time well spent. So as to do it now instead of having a bigger mess, later on. I think it was fairly forward thinking. So if that answers the question.
Yeah, it does, and I applaud you. Like I said, 508 accessibility has been, it only happens in the research department here. The rest of the department, they said when there's a federal mandate, then they'll look at it. So it's very, very backward thinking that we have. And I didn't know if anyone had any tips or tricks or hints on how you got buy-in to do these kind of things.
We've done a couple presentations to senior staff in the past, and one of the things that we've always harped on is case studies. I think was it Penn State that had a big accessibility lawsuit where they lost millions, and just kind of highlighting that there are, I don't want to say predatory, but there are accessibility watchdog groups out there which are always on the hunt for, are there any violations at the state or federal levels, and if so, we're going to sue the pants off them. So I think just scaring people straight and bringing in the financial aspect, the cost of it, is probably the best way to go about convincing anyone who may not be convinced. So
my daughter used to watch that show, Scared Straight. So yeah, maybe that's I don't know if you ever saw it, but it was hysterical.
I'll have to catch it. I don't know. We live in such scary times as it is. Let's see. I have this website pulled up. I was trying to reach it. It says this website can't be reached. Is there another link that we can use for that? Because it's not working right now. And I did see also in the chat, someone had posted, oh, thank you. Katie took care of Penny's question about the extension. Yeah, I have it installed in my extensions, and you click on the little extensions button, and here it is. It shows up for me under the access requested. So hopefully that works. So yeah, Gabby, I saw your website posted. I don't see it pulling up. If there's an alternative link you can send, we can check that one out. Or if anyone else has any other websites, or maybe they don't, and this is kind of sufficient for everyone. All right. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. So this, oh wait, here we go. I think Gabby just posted the link. Let's go ahead and share again. And let me bring that up. And Enid, yeah, I see your hand up again.
I just don't know when to lower mine. Sorry.
Oh, okay, no worries. All right, here we go. Rolls Royce. Excellent. So we're going to go ahead and do a test, see how that goes. Accessibility checker. And while we're waiting, Gabby, I loved your presentation at TRB this year. It was really well done. So I know I didn't get a chance to see you in person, but it was really good.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. It looks like we do have a few issues. Let's see, text contrast. Let's go ahead and see what this looks like. All right, so it looks like the white text on kind of the grayish background, the gray might be a little too light. So yeah, that may be, yeah, and that's interesting because of the dynamic photos. It's hard to control the contrast of the background versus the text. So yeah, that would be an issue. I mean, I love the rotating, the slideshow, the pictures, but I can see how that would cause dynamic issues. For each picture, it changes the contrast. So that's interesting. I wonder if there's a way to either outline the text or do something with the text rather than change the pictures that might help. But yeah, that's interesting. All right, let's see, missing H1. That looks like a header issue. Every page should have a clearly defined heading. Let's see which one is missing. Where are we seeing that? Let's see. Can we show that? Or maybe, I'm not seeing where we can click on it. Oh, I guess just in the page in general may be missing a header, an H1 tag. Okay, interesting. I wonder if we can like view the source, view the page source. I don't want to get too technical here and see where the header is. I see it does have a header, but yeah, this may be on my skill set to see what's going on. But it says there's an issue with the header, so that's interesting. Screen reader links, missing descriptions, link with different destinations, and so interesting. Yeah, it'll be interesting going through one by one and seeing what these links are. Are these real issues? And maybe this is some user feedback we can generate. Because right now, this application, I've experimented with it a little bit, but I think seeing, is it catching things that need to be caught? Are these false negatives? I think just going through your own websites and using these kinds of tools to see, do they really work? It seems like they do. So I just thought I would share what we have there. So, oh, and Claire posted another website. Let's get this going and see. Let's
We
see
had
what
a
we have.
raised hand from Jeffrey Potter.
Oh yeah, Jeffrey. Yeah.
Hi, sorry to keep interrupting like this, but yeah, the H1 tag does usually get tagged a lot using different accessibility checkers, because these things also try and enforce not just accessibility but good form. And so we can choose to ignore those. Usually what it is that if every H1, if every page has only H1s on it, it's not an H1. It tries to enforce some sort of hierarchy to it. Or if you start your page with an H2 instead of an H1, it says, hey, there's no H1. But then again, if you're using, only you know the context of the page within other pages, and only you know if you've designed your H1 to be something that's only used in very specific things because of your CSS. And so things like that aren't necessarily for accessibility, but they do help enforce a good rules of design. And good rules of design go a long way towards good accessibility. And in some ways, you can't tell the difference between the two. For instance, don't put white text on a gray background. That's good design, but it's also good design because it's hard to read. So, and also lots of other little things like that. So that's why the H1 probably showed up there.
Great. Thank you, Jeffrey. And honestly, this speaks to the talent and skill of our community that we have folks that could be like, well, that's why that is the way it is, because you may know something that someone else doesn't and vice versa. So I think, again, this is the strength of our community that we can step in, explain things and help each other out. So thank you, Jeffrey. Well said. That's great. All right. So we have one more website we're going to take a look at. Let's go ahead and see. And apologies, I've been mispronouncing this tool the whole time. It is Silktide, not Skilltide. So just want to make sure that is correct. So last test here. Let's see how our OU library instruction does. Let's see, it's got heading issues, it looks like. And link purpose should be clear from the text inside the link. Let's see which links are those. Read more. I don't know. I'm wondering, is this a contextual issue, or I don't know. What do folks think in your experience in accessibility? I don't want to be too prescriptive here, but is this an accessibility failure, or having a read more link, is that sufficient?
Michael,
Yes.
in most instances, click here, read more. Those are no-nos in the 508 world, but they're becoming, or they're used more often in websites, and they kind of get a pass on that. So I don't know if, I don't know what this this program, how it is set, how specific it is, but that might be one that can be overlooked.
Okay, good to
If it
know.
was if it was on a report and you put on here, read more, that's a big no-no. And click here, things like that are major no-nos.
Okay. But because it's a website, that's a different functionality, so that's why it gets the pass.
I would say I'm sure it would get a pass. I haven't read anything, and I've said it in a few meetings regarding websites, and I haven't found anyone who has, just thrown their arms up and said, don't do it. It's kind of a, well, and they're not sure how to work it on a website. It's, because that's what we're used to.
Yeah,
That's the way
interesting.
our websites have been set up since the Al Gore day. You know?
Yep. Goodness.
So I just if I see something in the future, when they do their next program on websites, I'll let you know and I'll bring this issue up.
Thank you, Enid. We've had some comments and responses. Jeffrey has his hand up, and then we'll get to comments posted by Beth and then Claire.
So web checkers will always err on the side of, hey, take a look at this. What is this image? Is this just like with Adobe Acrobat when you're trying to make something more accessible there, it just says, oh, this is an image. Do you need to pay attention to this and mark it up? Same thing happens with websites because they're not intelligent like we are. They will mark everything, and it is up to us to look at something like, in this case, read more. It's context sensitive. In this context, read more works really well. However, it is in another one, you may want to have a different description ready to use. I noticed somebody asked, what is a better description? In this case, I can't think of one. And in many cases like this, you just can't think of one. So it's better to put that than to put nothing. And starting there, you can then slowly improve your website piece by piece, fixing the really big problems first. This is not one of those really big problems. Read more works because of this context. However, in other ones, it might not. And there might be a better way to deal with it. It also might be a better way for you to clue in to say, hey, well, if everything on the page is read more, that means this page is pretty clickbaity and I better just redesign the whole thing. Instead of having, for instance, there are some websites, I'm sure you've encountered them, where you go to read an article and it's one paragraph long and you have to click to go to the next paragraph and then click to the next page for the next paragraph. Those things are terrible. That's the kind of thing that they're trying to avoid and they're trying to point out. But as a website itself, it's not intelligent. It's not one of us. It can't say, oh, well, this is fine.
Good point, Jeffrey. Thank you. Yeah, good context information. I'm going to post a link, Beth, post a link in the chat, more about the accessibility checker. And Jeffrey helped answer Claire's question, and Claire responded, that's a helpful way of thinking of it. And Enid, I see your hand up currently.
Jeffrey is spot on regarding the clickbaiting. That's one of the big things. Individuals, especially if you're using a cell phone, they only have so many tabs that you can open up. And if you start saying click here, click here, click here, click here, pretty soon you've got 10 tabs opened up. And if you can't see the tabs, if you can't, if your visual impairment is such that you really can't differentiate between one tab or another, it's hard for you to remember which is the original tab. So, even though there's been no definitive yes, no, it's okay, you really have to be careful about the hierarchy of all the clicks, because if you click to the next page and then have to click to a next page and then click to the next, all of a sudden you've got 4 or 5 tabs opened up and that person isn't able to understand what you're trying to convey.
Good point. All right. Yeah, I think context and is extremely important for this. And so things that may be seen as a negative can get a pass. So again, the importance of the human element when you're doing the accessibility checking cannot be understated. Going back to the manual versus automatic. Automatic is a great tool, but you still need that manual person to go over that and those results. So are there any other questions or comments as we go through this last bit here? I'm going to go ahead and run an accessibility check on their own website using their own tool. Let's see if there's anything ironic that comes out of this. This is how we know we can trust them. So, all right, what do we have? Let's see, links with different destinations and duplicate IDs. I don't know. It seems minor overall, but again, you know, that's okay. So not everybody's perfect. So I think that's a good takeaway. You know, not everyone's perfect, but as long as we're all trying and using the best tools we have available. I know some organizations have more money than others, budgetary wise. Even administration concerns can help dictate whether you meet accessibility requirements. So we're fortunate enough to be in a DoT culture that does emphasize that. So, you know, we're happy to share and help any way we can with this group. So yeah, and I think that's why everybody's here. So great group. So, all right, any last minute questions or comments before we move on? If not, I would like to solicit this group for potential topics in the future. In the past, we have looked at PDF and Word documents. We've looked at tables. We've looked at alt text. Yes, Enid.
Okay. Here's where I'll make my spiel. The big issue right now is Section 508 and AI. Is or is it not the best way to go? The accessibility problems with AI and Section 508, and the issues with copyright, AI, and Section 508. What is being found by the communities right now is that if you use AI to help you write any of your alt text, they're getting stuff that should never go into a document. You may have a picture of a red fire truck that you're showing to talk about the width of a bridge. But if you use AI to populate your alt text, it may be a red fire truck, and that's all it says. So you have to be really, really careful. They're finding a lot of issues with AI generated for alt text, and the Section 508 community is asking that you do not use it. When you set up your alt text, especially for 508 compliance, you have to go through and you have to tell the AI to use plain language. And then in most instances, excuse me, you have to let it know what grade level you want. So if it's a scientific journal, you know, you're going to want to say, you know, it's a higher grade. But if it's just something normal, maybe you're throwing out on your website, whatever, generally you're supposed to write to grade level 3. But you have to make sure you're marking that because the AI accessibility may default to a 3rd grade level, which you do not want if you're writing a scientific journal. So there's an issue with that. A lot of the federal agencies are now blocking all AI and like ChatGPT and any other generative AI programs. So most federal agencies are not even allowing ChatGPT to be used. A lot of universities are not allowing it. And they're specifically not allowing it for Section 508 purposes. And then a lot of the federal agencies and universities are not allowing generative AI because of the data scraping, the loss of assets, the loss of copyrights, the loss of patents, the loss of trademarks. There's a lot of stuff that is going on. So AI is, and I say it all the time, AI is a double-edged sword, but I do want to let you guys know if you're gambling on AI to help you with your Section 508 accessibility, be very, very careful because there are way too many flaws. And, you know, we even have problems with Microsoft talking to Adobe. There's too many issues there. So just, you know, just be really, really careful. Double check your work. Do not rely on AI to make your life easier, especially with accessibility, because it probably won't at this point in time. Until they can lock some of these programs down, you know, keep doing it the old way is what the Section 508 community is going for right now.
Thank you. Those are some great points, Enid. I wonder, for say you have a state agency who has a lot of documents. Well, obviously they're publicly funded, so they're publicly available. Say someone wanted to dump a lot of those documents into ChatGPT to help create summaries or something like that. Is there a danger with that if all the documents are already publicly available, or there shouldn't be any malicious, anything arising from that?
Okay, what could happen in the long run, and it has happened, and that's why the Authors Guild is actually suing ChatGPT right now and some of the other generative AI companies. And that's why the Copyright Office is asking for new rules and regulations regarding AI and copyright, because you take and you dump all of those articles into ChatGPT. Some of those articles, some of the information in those articles is copyrighted. Some of the information, maybe you didn't copyright some of the information. So you put it into ChatGPT. ChatGPT puts it in a little bowl, stirs it up, spits it out. Someone can pull it up. So they're now, someone in California is pulling up your information that came out of your research project. And they're looking at it and they're unscrupulous and they're copywriting it. And they're publishing it. And all of a sudden, you get a cease and desist letter. Now, whether you've copyrighted that information or not, you still have to deal with the cease and desist letter, because ChatGPT, once they throw that information out to the general public, they don't tell anyone where the information came from. Your information is not cited. Your copyrights no longer make any sense to them. Most AI generative programs do not care about copyrights. They don't care that this information came from Oklahoma DOT. They don't care that you spent $500,000 on that research and that you have a report, and at the front of the report it says copyright and the date of 2017, because they're not putting that information out. They're just putting the information out because it's out in the general public. Now, if John Smith goes on into Rosa P and he pulls a document up and it says it's copyrighted, he has to cite that. He has to cite the copyright. He has to cite who the authors are, all of that. But if he pulls the same information up out of ChatGPT, he doesn't know who the authors are. He doesn't know where the documents came from. He doesn't know where the information, the figures, the tables, the graphs, the equations, he knows nothing about where that information came from. And ChatGPT is not going to offer that information to them. So I would be very, very careful and not do a really deep dump of your data unless you get onto ChatGPT and there is a spot on there, and this still does not cover your backside, where you go through and you say you have to cite, you don't want this. You mark, there's some different things that you can mark off. But unfortunately, there's not a lot of scrupulous AI programs out there right now who will cover you. So if it came down to a war on whose copyrighted information that is, unless you've got it copyrighted and you filed for your copyright, that's about the only way that you can stop someone from interfering with your copyright, because they may copyright it, file the copyright, you didn't file the copyright, they now own it and you have to pay them even though you bought the information for $500,000. So not to be the bearer of bad news, but be very, very careful. Like I said, the Copyright Office has just sent out, excuse me, in the Federal Registry, a notice for comments on this issue of AI copywriting, data scraping. And they've received, I looked at it the other day, there were about 14,000 comments. And on one side, you have like the Federal Trade Commission that is saying this is dangerous. Please be careful, folks. And on the other side, you have groups like Meta, who is Facebook, saying, oh, no, when we scrape the data, when we take the data, we're only looking for similarities in speech and voice, and we're not doing anything nefarious with your data. So it's something that has come up. I don't know what the Copyright Office is going to do with this, but they had to throw the notice out there because this issue has caused so many problems. And like I said, the Authors Guild, this is a group of thousands of authors who have gotten together and said, stop ChatGPT, because we write a book, we copyright the book, we put it out there, and all of a sudden we find excerpts from our book coming out in someone else's book, and we can't stop it because we can't prove where it came from. And ChatGPT is not going to own up. So that's my 2 cents worth. If anyone has any questions, you're free to comment, offline if you want. And there will be information put out in the new TRB e-circular on copyright and AI. I'm submitting a chapter to the new e-circular regarding AI and the research world.
Wow. Yeah, when that comes out, please let us know. I think we'd all be very excited to read that. It sounds terrifying. So I used to be excited for ChatGPT, but now it's like, okay, maybe there's more strings attached than we thought. So thank you, Enid. That was good.
I'm always the bearer of bad news. Oh, my 508 training, if anyone, if I don't have you on my list already for 508 training, it's going to be probably the second week in May. We do Section 508 training for reports. So, I may touch some on websites after what you've done today, kind of spark some things for me, Michael. But it will also have copyright information, how you retain your copyright, with derivative reports, peer reviews, and AI. And like I said, I'm always the bearer of doom and gloom, but I like AI, but it's scary. And I like my copyrights because it's an asset.
Yep. Well said. Well said. Well, thank you so much, Enid. That was great. And I think for consideration for next time, please be thinking about what topics you would like us to cover. In the past, we've done PDFs, Word documents, we've done websites, we've looked at tables, we've looked at alt text. So is there an issue close to your heart that maybe we haven't touched on, or maybe we have, but you'd like us to go a little more in depth into it? Please either post in the chat. You can shoot myself or Beth an email, or Rosalind with topic ideas. Just let us know and we'll be happy to put that together. In the meantime, Beth, do we have a date on when our next community practice meeting will be?
We don't have a date yet. I think we were aiming for every other month, so that would be putting us in June. But we
Okay,
can certainly get a date figured out soon and send it out to the group so you can mark it on your calendars.
perfect. Thank you. That'll be good. I guess that might shoot for the middle or later part of June. So yeah, stay tuned for that. And we'll look forward to see everybody next time. So thank you everyone for joining. This has been a great conversation. As always, we'll post the slides and the recording on the YouTube channel. So thanks again and look forward to seeing everybody in June.
Thank you.